welcome back to Reefer Pro Tips with me, your host, Ann, dismounted hands, Queenie, dismounted beard, John, and an earful Coronico with mincemeat. Now, with mincemeat. Except non-meat mincemeat. So, non-mince, I don't know. You get the idea. You get the idea. Oh, dearie. Woof. Snow. Yep. Mince non. Non-mince mince. Non-mince meat? Non-meat, non-mince... Yeah, I'm just going to give up here. Anyway. Something like that. And let's paint, let's get this girl done today. Because I'm done with her. I'm like, I want to work on something else. My brain is like... but I'm too far to just give up on her, so I'm just gonna finish her. But to finish her, I need to figure out where I threw my blue liner. There it is. And I need my stone color. Stone gray. Morning, everybody. How y'all doing? I was tutoring one of my Californian CrossFit friends in how to use y'all last night. She admitted shamefacedly that she had adopted the y'all, and I'm like, yeah, it's because the y'all is awesome, and then I had to like inform her that the proper plural was all y'all, not y'alls. Alrighty, so I'm gonna get some of my stone gray mixed up, and I'm also gonna make a lighter version of it. Let's get this palette in frame. Boop. Yeah, right. Like, y'all's car is broken. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah, well, if you're proper texting y'allin', then, you know, it's all y'all. I picked that up from Ed, for sure. Ed and Ron. I was instructed in my turn, so. But yes, proper usage of y'all. There we go. Very, very appropriate on a Reaper stream. So, Quindy, I checked my tracking number for my corrected Chimera order, and it is actually, like, shipping. It's actually, like, on its way. So they got it out fast. So it's good that I didn't have to wait, you know, like, we were kind of in limbo for a week while our order was processing. We had a tracking number but no movement. That is not the case with them correcting their mistakes. So that made me happy. Yeah, so it means David gets a Christmas present. But then I warned him last night. I'm like, you realize, because I had to buy him a backup Christmas present just in case I couldn't, like, get this stuff in time. I'm like, you realize I now have 2 Christmas presents for you, and you only have 1 for me. Hint, hint. Then he realized he hadn't even ordered my original Christmas present, and I'm like, you better do that, because the closer it gets to Christmas, the less likely it's going to be on time, especially with how slow shipping has become. So yeah. Yes, they did immediately take care of it. It was really nice. So it's on the way, and it should hit me next week. Or given their past estimate being actually a little bit slow as far as when it actually showed up, hopefully it hits by the weekend. But either way, it's on its way, and that made me happy. I'm going to use a Syrian sand mix to highlight here for this because I want it to be a little more warm, like we got this one. Oh, that's a bad sign, Koro. Oh no. That's the worst feeling ever when you see the start of the loop of death and you're like, oh no, my package is trapped in the loop of death. And now the probability that it now gets lost or, like, you know, delayed indefinitely is now much higher. Sometimes parcel tracking is just kind of like an exercise in masochism. Where you just keep checking it and it just gets worse. The news just gets worse and worse. So I don't want this thinned too much. I'm just going to drop 1 drop of water in everything. I'm mixing up brown liner as well because I don't want everything to be blue liner. I want to kind of be able to create a cool but neutral shadow for this, the lower part here. I decided, hi Slayer. Got both of my videos filmed yesterday. Yay. So today will probably be a editing day. I have PT, probably my last PT session today. Since I can run without pain as long as I'm doing my exercises, everything is cool. And we'd rather not keep pinging the HSA for quite a few $100s a month. So I want this to be a little lighter. Didn't quite go light enough when I added those Syrian sands, so I want it to be different, obviously different from my stone gray. I might even need another layer. If you want a natural highlight for a stone color that's like this, that's like a stone gray or weathered stone, leather brown is actually a very good highlight for that. Yeah, I would be kind of sad. It seems like a precursor to the Loop of Doom. The indefinite package never arriving. That said, I like a little warmer highlight, so instead of using leather white, which actually isn't in my box because I never use it, I'm going to use this Osirian sand to create, there we go, that's a nice warm, almost cairnstone color. Excellent. Mincemeat, yes, mincemeat. Very British. So I figured out the best way to reheat turkey. Like we had a whole extra set half of breast. So we actually reheated it with the sous vide, which warmed it but didn't cook it. It was actually, it stayed moist. So that was really nice. Really juicy still. Not dried out. I'm going to put a brush full of my brown liner into my blue liner. That's going to take the blue down just a notch, but still give me something cooler. And then I want a shadow color with these guys. Yeah, it's still pretty blue, but that's all right. It can be a darker shadow. I want to be able to put something down underneath the ledge here. I ended up giving a couple of mini pies, like half-sized pies, instead of getting a half pie for our Thanksgiving. I got a mini pumpkin for David and a mini Dutch apple for me. And the mini Dutch apple was even gluten-free, which made me very happy. It was super tasty. Would buy again. We do, but the suet thing just totally turns people off. People over here are used to suet being given to birds. Like that's like our encounter with suet. Like that's the typical American understanding of what suet is, I think, if they even understand that much. All right, so we've got enough range here to play around with our stone colors. Hey there, crows. You're unusual then, crows. Yeah, in the US anyway, I'd bet. I would say mincemeat is definitely a niche thing here in America. Alright, now we can get close and start using all these colors to get our stone all gussied up. So I'm going to use that kind of bluish color to get the underside here. Although I think I'm going to block it up even darker. So I threw some brown liner into it there. The underside of this can be very dark. It's in shadow. And you can paint it that way. And likewise, we can kind of paint the dark up here. And lighten it up when it starts getting in here. I'm going to put a little bit darker on the inside though. Oh, yeah. That's really cool that you have a local British import store, Crows. We have our Piazza's local grocery store, the little tiny, like, privately owned kind of Whole Foodsy type store that we have. They also import a lot of British stuff over the holidays. I just saw Turkish Delight in there the other day. Which, if those of you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you ever read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you will remember that the White Witch used it as a bribe. Alright, I'm going to mix myself up and off black over here with more brown than blue. Decided I wanted kind of a really dark gray color in here. It's a little bit not as dark as my actual liners. That's about good. Edmund. Yeah, exactly, Crowley. Not weak-minded, just really, really traumatized. So I'm going to go through with my shadow color and separate out these stones. Right, like really like 9, like 10 or something, I don't know. Really, really young. I was so sick of Turkish Delight. I bet it's the kind of thing that you will get sick of, right? Even after just a few pieces, much less, you know, having to reshoot and reshoot. That'd be an incentive to get it right the first time, right? Not self-serving at all there, Kodiak. No one can blame you. You should totally get your kids. Or are they not at the dinosaur age? If the dinosaurs are still out there, we used to have like the Triceratops and the T-Rex. I think those got made into bones at some point. You could get them some dinosaurs. I don't know if your kids are at the dinosaur age yet, or if they... But those are nice and big also. There are some velociraptors. Yeah. I think the dinosaurs are in bones, regular bones too, so regular bones also. So they wouldn't be that expensive, relatively speaking. So just lining around these, just putting a little tiny line around the bricks here just to make the stones kind of stand out a little bit better. She's not as sensitive as you were, huh? And kids are all different ranges, right? Just like adults. I mean, I bet Quindy would have sat there and watched that when she was a kid. If they're talking, there is no liquid acrylic that I know of. There's fluid acrylic. Okay. All right, let's just take a step back. It sounds like the person who meant liquid acrylics was talking about fluid acrylics, unless they were talking about acrylic inks. So the only true fluid acrylic, really or liquid acrylic, would be like the inks, like De La Rowney, the new Chimera Velvet, stuff like that. Jamao Crows. So I'm betting like they were talking about more fluid acrylics. Fluid acrylics are stuff like Reaper. And Golden also has a fluid acrylics line. But essentially it is the paint that will just come out of the bottle in drops. And then there's also tube acrylics, right? So the thickest is tube. And then you've got fluid acrylics, which is Reaper and everything, like the Golden fluid acrylics line. That's all the same stuff. Craft paint, it's all the same stuff. Like, it's all the same viscosity, right? And if they're talking about truly liquid, then I have to assume that the only thing that fits that is the acrylic inks. My guess is that person is misusing the wrong term for it. And they didn't mean liquid, they meant fluid, which is an easy mix-up. In which case, Reaper is a fluid acrylic. Everybody thinks they're normal. Or if they think normal is boring, everybody assumes they're not messed up. We're never messed up inside our own heads. Okay, then they're probably dealing with like acrylic inks. But they are right, and I was just thinking about this morning, in that what we call acrylic inks really aren't inks. Like, the new way to like essentially it is an ink these days is really just a liquid acrylic paint. Unless it's like you're still dealing with like fountain pen inks, which might still be dyes. The original inks were all dyes. So fully soluble in water, which pigment is not. But my guess is that they're dealing with something like the Chimera Velvets, Poly, or Daler Rowney, which are truly fluid, and you can get that kind of capillary action out of them, like truly liquid. Like, all right, hey, here, let's go off on a tangent. Everybody up for a tangent? I'm up for a tangent. All right, as it so happens, I have examples of everything we just talked about on my desk. So, regular, quote unquote, regular acrylic paint, tube acrylics, the original acrylic. What everything used to be. Very, very stiff. Holds a point in the palette. Like you can see it just kind of standing up there. Very thick, will hold texture. Goopy when you put it on the brush. It sits there. You can see it. It's very stiff. It has it. The reason that you want it this way for canvas painting is that canvas painting often is about keeping texture, in the paint, like building up texture to create various effects. Where you don't want that with miniature painting, which is a fluid acrylic, which has some viscosity. It's not water. When you pick it up with the brush, you can still see that there's a glob on the brush, but as you can see, it's not, it doesn't have little threads hanging off of it. Like, it's not going to be stiff. It's not going to hold its form. When you drag a brush through it, it slowly self-levels. See, it's slowly self-leveling back there. Whereas if I drag a brush through my umber, it's just going to stay. Like, the only thing that makes that self-level at all is the fact that I put a bunch of water around it so it wouldn't dry to my palette. But it stays there. Like, that valley will stay there. It will dry like that, right? Okay. So now, let's grab a Chimera. Open the box. Doo-doo-doo. Let's just grab our primaries. Primary box. Ooh, it's fresh. Smell that fresh paint smell, folks. What's gonna work? The red will probably... Actually, let's use the purple because magenta, because it'll look more like orchid. All right. Acrylic ink. Should. Now, these may be a little more viscous than the Daler Rowneys. Daler Rowneys are true, like, watery. But we're gonna see. We're gonna see about this. Hey there, Miniature Sten. Did I miss a raid? I was just doing a comparison of tube paint, Reaper paint, which counts as a fluid acrylic, and now my new Chimera Velvets that I just got. Much, much thinner aperture compared to a normal dropper bottle, because the material that you're working with is much more runny. So then we drop that into here. Boom. Yeah, it's not too far off. Actually, not too far off MSP. I bet, let me grab one of David's Daler Rowneys. I bet it's going to be actually different. One moment. We're going to do this, darn it. We're going to do it. Let me grab one. All right, so Daler Rowney. These suckers were the original acrylic ink. Look, it even says so. And when we put this sucker in there, and we'll just do our direct comparison. Now this comes in a jar with a dropper. And this is, oh, whoa, it's really airy. Hold on. Come on. This is downright watery. Okay. Now let's rock this. Okay. Where do I put my glasses? There. E-key. Here we go. Okay. So the velvet is going to go back together. Notice, though, that it actually self-levels a little faster than the MSP. I can pick it up on my brush. It looks a lot like MSP on the brush. Now, partially, I think this is because the velvets are formulated to be a thicker acrylic ink. So they even say concentrated, right? So they are going to be a little more viscous than a regular acrylic ink. And the reason for that is that Chimera wanted you to be able to paint with these, just like a regular paint. So, pretty darn. So very similar to MSP, a little less viscous, I would say, a little more fluid. Definitely on the magenta, it's going to be a little more transparent. I assume, yeah, this is magenta. Okay, so Daler Rowney, true acrylic ink, original acrylic ink, water. You can't even see, like, when I drag a brush through it. It's like, it's drippy, it's watery, it's like thinned paint. Still pretty punchy, but this is a naphthol, I think. No, they call this process magenta, but it's definitely like a much redder quinacridone than this is. Also, I'm a little dubious about their process cyan and process yellow and process magenta because honestly, they have white in their cyan and nobody respectable adds white to their cyan. They don't know what they're trying to do. So when they're talking about liquid acrylics, they're probably talking about something like the Daler Rowney inks, which are truly liquid. Now you can make this become that. You just need to add a bit of water because it's concentrated acrylic ink, right? So that implies you add water and it turns into that. So I'll add 1 drop. This still has a little bit of stiffness to it. I'm going to add 2 drops. There we go. So once I can drag a brush through and it self-levels instantly, I'm at about the same consistency. I had to add 2 full drops of water to that. This is about a 1-to-1 is what I'm guessing. With the, I didn't really keep track of my ratios there, but my guesstimate would be this is about a 1-to-1. So it takes about a 1-to-1 to make one of these concentrated inks, concentrated acrylic inks, become more like a Daler Rowney. I wish I had like a real magenta to compare since these are both supposed to be magentas. So this is an artist product. So it's Daler Rowney, Rowney. David uses these a lot, but he's very excited about the new chimeras too. So this is, and you can get these at like Michael's Hobby Lobby. They have them all over the place. You can get sets of them. They come in big jars. They're very, very, very fluid. So there's 4 different measures of acrylic. All of these are acrylic paints, guys. All of them. The only difference is the base and possibly the concentration and type of pigment. So when we're dealing with this, we're dealing with traditional artist pigment. We're dealing with a base that's got a lot of gum added to it, like filler that makes it stiff. If we want to, we can turn this into something more akin to a Reaper Master Series just by adding water. Just like we did here, you can always thin it down, right? So if I add some water and I thin this out, I didn't add much to the palette, but this is more like that now. So if I would have added a little less water, I could have gotten it to the consistency of MSP, but I didn't use very much, so... And this is the Scale Color Artist Tube Burnt Umber, which is one of my favorite colors. And then we've got our Orchid Purple from MSP. And that's going to, again, use traditional artist pigments, although the industrial grade ones for better light fastness. And it's also going to use some high-density pigments, depending on the color. This one, Orchid Purple, does not use high-density pigments. Oh, it's more of a transparent color. We're looking for a good raspberry color there. So a little bit of water on my brush brings it to that consistency. It's still holding a little bit there, a little bit of stiffness. But these two, like really the only difference between the tube paint and the regular miniatures paint we're used to is that the pigment rollout is usually slightly chemically different. Like I said, we're usually using a higher light fastness. I think most miniatures companies are than some of the true artist pigments, where you're going to find still some lower light fast pigments just because the color is better, or it's like the only way to really get that color and they haven't figured out how to improve it yet. But either way, so these are very similar. Then you get down to these guys, and it's really down to the concentration of pigment and the base. And whether, we said, this is a concentrated acrylic ink, so it's meant to be thicker, just like a balsamic glaze, as opposed to balsamic vinegar. That's really the difference between these two things. So, like, this is the thick glaze, and this is the thin vinegar. Light fastness is how resistant a paint is to fading under UV light. So the reason I got these, Laura, the other difference here is that these use a different grind of pigment, different class of pigment than these guys do. These are not looking for coverage. These are looking for color intensity. They're looking for high chroma, saturation. They're looking for punch, usually. So what the inks use, and this is why they don't separate so much, by the way, what the inks use is superfine pigments. Now, what that means, though, is that you're never going to get high coverage out of them. Like, the coverage is always going to be weaker than a standard pigment and much weaker than a high-density pigment. So the high-density organic pigments that are used nowadays to create the non-toxic pseudo-cadmiums and the stuff that we use as HD pigments, those are much kind of the opposite end from these superfines. Superfine pigments are all the rage now to make things like washes, and GW contrast paints use superfine pigments. Just looking at how they work, they almost have to. But yeah, so the reason I got the chimeras is because I wanted to be able to build glazes that were incredibly vibrant. You guys know I do a lot of underpainting, right? So for me to be able to glaze over white and get a really strong color for, say, OSL, sometimes that's really, or really strong color, but still show through some of my texture, for me that's like exciting. They're also really mixable. It's around Reaper. Cheap craft paint. The difference in cheap craft paint is it doesn't have nearly as much pigment in it. That's why it's cheap. And it uses a very cheap base. So the base is usually more fragile. It's not as durable. You also, it tends to be a little goopy, plasticky. You can feel that in it. Tends to separate, especially because it doesn't have a high pigment count. But most of the money they're saving for this craft paints is the fact that it has very little pigment in it relative to a miniatures paint. So when you try to thin it, it falls to pieces completely. So here's the dealio. David uses these to intensify other colors. He uses them for glazing. So he doesn't actually paint with these, but he has mixed them into paints. And because these are still acrylic pigments, because it's not a dye, like a traditional pen ink, because it's not a dye, it mixes into I can mix in all these other paints. Like, you could make a mix of this and this. Or if I got my carmine, say, if I had a red in the tube paint and I wanted to give it more punch, I could mix some of this in. I could mix some of this in, and it would all be compatible. Unless the pH is weird. But I expect these to be pretty neutral. But as far as they're all paint. They're just different type of pigment. Now, if you mix these together, you'll lose coverage by adding a more transparent, hyperfine pigment. Yes, absolutely. I'm expecting that you could use the velvets or paint or FW paints, the De La Rounies, to paint translucent models. Yes, right. So you wouldn't take away the transparency that much because because the superfine pigment is more transparent naturally. There's just not as much body to the pigment. Yeah, no. I'm not the one to answer that since I don't lick my brush anymore. Because I don't want, to put toxic chemicals in my system. But yeah, so what I'm interested in is with these is I'm going to try to actually paint with them and see how they perform. Because they are viscous out of the bottle, and that viscosity, and that's a base choice. So having a thicker base on these and also really, really concentrating the pigment means that you can get some coverage out of these, especially because they're giving us a white. That's the other thing that is... now, white inks can be really, really useful. The velvet, I'm expecting to act more like a white paint, a really thin white paint, but the white Daler Rowney, a lot of people will use it just like you described. They'll essentially use it to capillary action into like little runes or lines or something like that. If they need that line to like glow or pop, then the white ink can be really, really useful that way. You may have to add a little flow improver, depends. Yeah, I got these, Richard, but I was just doing a breakdown of what's difference between this, and this, and this, and this. So yeah, so different bases on all of them, and the paint base is like the mixture of water and resins that the pigment goes into, pigment and additives. So different bases across all of these. And then different pigment types here and here. Cool, no problem, Polly. It takes somebody who, like, I think it takes somebody who's worked with different paints a lot to give you that description. So, I tried to get superfine pigments for MSP just to play around with them, but I've always had trouble ordering a sample. We actually did have a, technically we have someone we can order them from. We just never got it together. The company never really got it together to get me samples. So yeah, so you get a lot of intensity with these guys because that superfine pigment. There's a particular way, and David knows the physics, which will blow your mind, because David actually studied light and paint physics just a bit, like went into a deep dive on it so he could understand. But there is a particular way that light scatters through the finer pigment particles that gives you that more vibrant color. But yeah, so there you go. That's the breakdown. We have successfully derailed the stream. Maybe I'll do something on this for my $5 Patreon tier. In fact, maybe, I don't know if I might have to do it this month and save the Chimera review till next month because I don't have much time this month. I'm losing a whole week. Actually, I'm losing almost 2 weeks to the holidays. So it's going to be kind of fraught because I'm going to essentially not be able to get much Patreon done from the 22nd on. Yeah, that they got the most votes. I'm going to review the velvets, but I want to actually have time to paint a model, or at least part of a model with them. I need to do that in order to have a real review. I need to be able to try to use them for a whole bunch of different stuff, and I just don't think I'm going to have time this month. Yeah, I didn't mention Velociraptors. Wait, I can mention Velociraptors. The Reaper Velociraptors paint up really well with thinned paints because of the texture on their hides. So I would recommend going with these to paint with glazes on the Velociraptors. There you go, Quindy. Are you better now? But yeah, I'm going to review the velvets, though. I may do this kind of comparison thing, though, for this month. Actually, thanks for bringing this up. This is a good tangent, and it should be in writing somewhere, in my opinion. Like, even if it's just on the Patreon. So maybe I'll do it for the YouTube eventually as well. I'll do a little video kind of like this. Velociraptors. But yeah, so there we go. There we go. That was the first I've opened my Chimera Velvets, guys. So yeah, these are going to be pretty versatile. Pretty versatile, I suspect. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely paint with them normally, just based on the consistency. I'd have to check the opacity of the white, because if you're going to do opaque with them, then the white really needs to it needs to have some coverage, but alrighty, cool. My chimeras have been busted into. In public, on stream. There we go. Excellent, there we go. Alright, I'm going to throw a little more water into these so they don't just totally dry onto my palette while we're working on other stuff. There we go. So yeah, I hope that was a good description. But yeah, I would assume anybody saying liquid acrylics is talking about acrylic inks then from your description of what they were doing with them. Because the capillary action thing is something that the acrylic inks have been useful for a very long time. Alrighty. Now back to what we were doing. Yeah. I want a bigger brush. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, kind of the nice thing about the velvets is they're fairly, like, they're not a huge set of paints. I'm going to paint this cooler down here, guys, since it's lower down in the model. I'm going to darken it as well as we go, but I'm going to coldify this a little. But yeah, in a lot of ways, the velvets are, they're kind of like giving you the fish instead of teaching you how to fish, but at the same time, like, it's just interesting. They're like kind of an iteration on contrast paint, but like not like taking it a step more toward coverage. But you still should be able to do contrast type stuff with them. Like, it's the same kind of stuff. I'll have to see how the base reacts. But I mean, so far it's not really, I'm seeing a little bit of separation, but not any more than I would see. Like, you can see it separating more than this is just by, you can see that lighter bloom on the surface. And that's the thing, but in general, I wouldn't expect it to separate. And part of that is magenta, because the pigment is just that way. And this stuff's holding together pretty well. I had to put more, I didn't put any water in the De La Rowney there, but I did put water into the magenta, remember. It's at a 1-to-1, so it'll separate, but it'll take it a little bit. So that's about what you expect with paint anyway. Oh, whipped cream. Kiki loves whipped cream. Like, I gave her a tiny taste of it one time, and she, ever since that time, like, it must have made a huge impact on her, because ever since that time, she knows exactly what that cylinder is, even though most of the year it stays in the fridge. Like, she understands whipped cream. And she'd be like, that be my jam. Just going to darken down here in general, underneath this overhang. But yeah, anybody with any more questions about, like, acrylic inks and etc. Oh, I didn't really give a full explanation on the light fastness thing. So when pigments were first when people first started using, like, tube paints, when tube paints began to, like, be a thing and there began to be art companies, there were a lot of pigments that were really beautiful but didn't have any light fastness that would fade super fast. Like rose madder, I think, was one of them. Artists still use them, but that means that sometimes when you look at art in galleries today, There are a couple artists who love those colors, and their stuff has really become very bland because over time the color has just faded terribly. Magenta is probably the weakest color versus UV, and that's true even today. That we've got a higher light fastness version, that most miniature paint companies use, I suspect. But it's still not perfect, and, as far as if you ever left minis out in the sun, like, you would notice the magenta probably fade the fastest. Other colors have various light fastnesses, but today, thanks to, industrial pigment research, which pretty much is trying to make, the paint look good on your house, long, years and years after you apply it. These days there are fairly high light fastness versions of most standard pigments. Where you encounter the opposite is if you use a lot of tube paints, sometimes you'll still get access to something that really doesn't have a really high light fastness, just because they're trying to use the original artist pigments. So we don't say squirty cream. Yeah, you're right. Luca would have a field day with that. But yeah, so these days, there's really, the paints are light fast enough, unless you're leaving your minis out on a shelf that the sun comes in and hits, right? You're not really going to see a problem with fading. I don't think in all my years of painting I've ever heard anybody tell me or had anybody show me a mini that it actually faded due to UV. Just thinning down my liners here so I can get some additional shading built up here. But we've got some darker stone now down where the feet are. That's good. We want to encourage the light to stay up here. So that's why I'm darkening down the stone down here with a mixture of blue and brown liner plus the stone gray. The most non-light fast type of colorant is actually dyes. So inks like you might use in a fountain pen. Those used to be what miniaturist painters used when they said inks, by the way. They were using usually artist inks, often the Winsor Newton. There was a nut brown color that everybody loved to use, but it also had terrible problems with bleed and fading. And so inks were just kind of they slowly became less and less utilized. They work, the one thing they do work on, I'm going to put a harder shadow here underneath her foot. The one thing they do work on, though, is metallics, because you really don't get any bleed through with metallics, but the light fastness is still an issue. So inks do tend to fade very easily if left near UV light. I would worry if you painted stuff with inks and left it in a miniature case that got some sunlight throughout the day, like ours does in the winter. But we haven't had any problems, so I assume everybody's painted models for us is using regular paint. So yeah, it's not really something you worry about too much these days. More so, I think it's still more so a problem with tube paint. But I'm not dead sure on that, because it seems dumb to me that tube paint companies wouldn't take advantage of higher light fastness pigments. I mean, varnish, unless it's a UV protective varnish, obsidian, it wouldn't do a thing. If the varnish blocks ultraviolet, then sure, I would suppose that would be that would work. And all if by varnish you mean sealers, many sealers I mean, sealers tend to be very different beasts depending on if you're using a solvent-based one or a bottled one, as far as what they're made of and what it'll do. Just lining again there. But yeah, there's nothing inherently in a varnish that resists UV light, last I checked. Gamer H. You missed a cool, like, paint chemistry thing. Just trying to muck around until I like these, really. I tell you that not to be smug about it, but so that you know, to go back and watch some of the VOD. We were comparing the Chimera Velvets, the De La Rani Artist Inks, Acrylic Inks, and Master Series and tube paint. I'm just going to put in a little bit of speckling and stippling with lighter color to bring up a little bit of the stones down here, get a little detail on them. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you may want to go back and watch the VOD. It's a fairly short section. I'll try to do something about it on my Patreon as well. It may be this month's $5 PDF, just because it is pertinent info now that a lot of people are getting their hands on the velvets. So once that's all shipped, everybody will be able to order them. Hey, Corsair. I was humming Carol of the Bells like 2 days after Thanksgiving, and David rounded on me. He's like, and then he stopped, and I'm like, it's after Thanksgiving. And he's like, no! He was going to tell me it was too early, but it wasn't too early. Alright, let's get this lighter colored stone. But yeah, so expect something about this on my Patreon as well. I'm going to darken this a little bit. I want to build a darker stone color that's not quite as dark as my other ones, so I'm going to use this on these stones instead of that dark one, because these are lighter. Not Christmas music. It's December. You can deal with Christmas music. Oh no, not Whamageddon. Still in the game? You've avoided it? Good. I haven't heard it at all either, but many of the grocery stores I go to play 80s songs, and so I fully expect to be out of the Whamageddon game fairly soon. I'm also going to thin this darker one. I used to love Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. But I wouldn't do 10 rounds of it. I'm going to take this darker color and do some stippling. When you have stones that are very smooth like this, the way to put texture in them is really to stipple them. So yeah, I've got to say I've had a good, very good communication with Dracoya, who is Chimera's new U.S. distributor. So that's nice. It's a nice omen. Hopefully, Chimera will be able to keep them supplied, and we'll be able to actually get Chimera stuff here in the States a little easier. That would be nice. So I'm gonna take this medium dark gray, and I'm gonna start stippling it onto the stones just to add some texture and variance. It will make the stones look a little darker at first until I start going back in with more highlighting. And I'm going to try to keep the dots pretty irregular. Oh yeah, for sure. Accounting office of retail, yep. I actually really like Enya's winter album. So that's like it has very little like traditional Christmas on it as far as Americanized Christmas. But it still feels wintry. So it's my winter my lead up to Christmas listen, and then I save the actual Christmas music for Christmas itself. But unfortunately, David's mother has a Christmas like mix that she likes to use, and so while they're here, it tends to go, and I just have to suffer through it. Luckily, it's not terrible. It's not like terrible, horrible, like Jingle Bell Rock or anything. But she does love jazz. Dracoya, D as in dragon, Racoya. They don't have a lot on their site yet, I think, Obsidian, but they're the ones who are fulfilling Chimera's Kickstarter here in the US. The Velvet's Kickstarter. I think they're in Wisconsin. Because my package, the first like UPS depot that it showed up going through was actually Elk Grove, which is maybe not even half an hour from where I grew up. Yeah, I haven't been watching deals so much. So we got see how we stippled in a lot of that. Well, I need to stipple the top of this a little bit too. Bye, Cursor. We'll see you in a bit. Yeah, I think the minis advent calendars are a little more interesting sometimes, but and if we've got an area where we can already see texture from the washes that I put down, then we're going to kind of go along with that and accentuate it. So I'm going to stay away from the lighter areas. Unless the whole tile is lighter, and then I'm going to do a little stipple. And I also want it to be darker near her, so... This is just going to enable us to make an interesting stone texture. You can already see it coming up. So let's go and get all of the stippling in on this then. We're gonna go get a Christmas tree this weekend, I think, on Sunday. Quindy swinging the band hammer. Yeah, I'm just like, I have more than enough dice. Like, David and I usually get each other minis, but I'm gonna get all boring gifts this year. I asked for a new jacket. I'd love a new set of noise canceling headphones too, but those are expensive. But my old ones are really falling. The leather is peeling off the foam of the ear things and everything. And I can only do so much with super glue. Maybe back when I was playing role-playing games, that would be true. I used to buy a set of dice for each new character I was playing. But I haven't played for so long now. So lots of little stipples. Oh, Steam Forged, Richard? Is that who you're talking about? Alright, there. Need to get the bottom part of this and darken it down and get all that stippled. This under there, and I'm just gonna wet stipple my stone gray into that. Yeah, I used to have a dice set for each Warhammer army too. Yeah, I feel like you must. Like at that point, I need themed dice in order to play effectively with Warhammer. There was no way I could use my Tyrannid dice with my Eldar. Just wasn't the right color. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Mirrors. Yeah, I'm not as familiar with them. Kiki, no barks. No, you're just hearing random crap, Keekser. Yeah, you're just hearing random crap out there. But it's not us. No, it's neighbors. Keeks. No, no. She hears a lawn. Somebody's out there cutting hedges or something. It sounds like the lawn people that come for our yard. But it's not in our yard, Keeks. It's not in our yard. It's elsewhere. Being a silly little keeker. My stipples get really messy when I'm like tired of stippling. Wow. I wonder if somebody was feeding them from your house, Quindy. So if I get really messy with my stippling and it doesn't look good, I can take my lighter color, my lighter stone color, and do stippling to interrupt what I've done. And get back the texture that I'm looking for. So my color where I put a bit of the Osirian sand and white into the stone gray. Oh, they were feeding the birds and thus feeding them that way. See, I see. Got it. Yeah, whenever a cat comes into our yard, I chase it away. Don't want them eating the birds from my feeders. Right, yep, exactly. Yeah, I think we've talked about our wish that people would keep their cats inside. Hopefully I've scared away the cats that try to get our birds enough that they've decided it's not worth it. A couple of times Kiki's been out, and that has been a Kiki head in for that cat, full tilt, and that cat is out of there. So there's got to be easier bird feeder pickings in the neighborhood. Yeah, that's true. Like if you live in an area that the cats can just get gobbled up by bigger predators. Andrew was just talking about the fact that he and Allie saw a coyote just outside of their yard the other day. They live up in the hills a bit, but they're a lot closer to San Francisco than we are. So they're actually in a pretty built up area all around them. It's just like crazy how far into suburbia coyotes range these days, and they will absolutely kill a cat. Cats are dinner, as far as they're concerned. Yep, too many coyotes, exactly. I'm gonna get a little bit of lighter edging around the edges of these stones. I'm going to grab a little bit of that very, very light color, that kind of cairn stone, kind of yellowy gray, yellow, off-white. And I'm going to stipple that around the edges of stones. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we can't blame them, right? The animals are like, hey, you took our habitat, now we're going to take yours, right? They're just looking for food. I wonder if the bird feeders attract the deer sometimes. Yeah, coyotes are really adaptable. Like, yeah, so that would be a reason for deer to come into urban areas. So I'm just taking that lighter color and I'm edging these guys. Yes, as I mentioned, there's a Bay Area Foxwatch guy who covers, who tracks urban foxes here in the Bay Area. So just a little bit of edging. It's not like super stark, and I'm mostly stippling it on just to make these stones stand out a little bit better. I don't want these guys in here to get it not that light anyway because they are underneath the overhang here, but I can take a little bit of my next darkest stone color and do a tiny bit. Though I'll probably keep it to the sides and bottom here because it's mostly reflected light that would be coming in and hitting these stones. Yeah, Santa Fe has a bad coyote problem. There are, like, there's kind of a dried up watercourse that goes through part of the city, and they warn people not to walk there alone because of the coyotes. And definitely not to walk there with their dog, or because they'll come in packs. That's neat, Korniko. He's like, you don't look at me, I won't look at you. Nothing to see here. So with all the stippling, we get a lot more kind of stone texture on the stone. If they're in a pack, they can be, Korniko. There are, I believe there are accounts. Maybe, I haven't ever double checked to see if that's urban legend. I bet if it's children. Yes, it is rare. Packs of coyotes can attack humans. The risk increases significantly in areas where they have become habituated to people through feeding. Attacks are more likely when coyotes are hungry or when they view humans as easy prey, especially children or people with small pets. When coyotes acclimate to humans, they start to look at them as prospective food sources. Yeah, and they run in packs. They run in packs in Santa Fe. Yeah. is what I was told. For some reason, my really light color I want to stipple around. You can use the edge of the side of your brush like this. You don't have to like try to freehand it when you've got an edge that you can easily hit. You can just stipple with the side of your brush to bring out that edge. Yeah, exactly. A kid or a pet would be in trouble. Yep. So I like to do a little bit of wear around the edges of stones typically. Oh wow, okay. That's not good, feeding them. I don't worry about coyotes going hungry. Oh, funny trash. That poor raccoon. Our world is so baffling to animals sometimes. So just that kind of texture. When stones are smooth like this, and you can still add a lot to them. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to watch that video. I would feel so sad for the raccoon. Hey, it's Miniature Stand. Indeed, salutations. Just doing endless stone texture here, so I'll be relieved to hand over the stream to you. I will be happy when this model is done so I can start on something more interesting. Maybe the Ogre Mage. Oh yeah, Javelin. Those wild pigs are no joke. I think they're a lot scarier than seeing a coyote. But anyway, we'll get ready to hand it off to Luca. Hopefully you guys had fun today, hanging out, chatting about animal friends and paint. So we got a fair amount of texture and we just need to get a little bit more in, then we can do her eyeballs, then we'll be done and paint the base. So not bad. Tomorrow's stream, we're going to be, hopefully actually we should be able to finish up Ghosty Eye. We just need to, like, we were doing a lot of the glow there. Yeah, they're an American thing, Obsidian. Although I guess they're Southwest thing. So we've got that, and we need to come and we need to highlight the bones here, get around our outside other light source. I think I had decided that I do need a little bit of glow here on this side of this because the sword is overhanging it. So just a little bit. So yeah, so we're working on it. And so yeah, come back tomorrow for Mr. Ghosty Guy. Maybe we can actually make a push and get him done. Or as close as makes no difference. And yeah, this will be what we do. Luke, I hope you have a wonderful stream. I'm going to get my butt in gear, so I have to get stuff done today. Not be too much of a slacker. And yeah, everybody, it was great hanging out. Yeah, you take care too. And Quindy, you have a good one. Thanks for modding, Quindy and Kuro and John. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.